officially starting the new material, so I started the camera for those that cannot be with us. On page 207, we have to look at our rhythms out of the sightseeing book, and how do they differ than the rhythms from last unit? Well, the rhythms from the sightseeing book this unit involve syncopation at the subdivision of the beat level, not just the division. So for instance, last unit, we were dealing with rhythms that would be one, and one, two, whatever it was at the division level. But now, starting on page 207, we have some rhythms of syncopation at the subdivision level. And we're starting with simple meters. Simple meters. I probably don't need to remind you, but it doesn't hurt. Subdivision in simple meters means we're going to have 4 notes crammed into one beat. Let's say this is on beat 1 of a measure. What would we speak in order to perform that? 1 EM, right? However you want to spell them, that's fine with me. Okay. So now, we're going to have sometimes syncopation, we're going to have figures, rhythmic figures that look like this. So what would we say for that? So supposing it's on B1. That's right. 1E, 2E, whatever, something like that. Yeah, it's just, putting it together. There's no and for that. So, dots and ties are going to be combined with these notes to create syncopation at the subdivision level. Remember syncopation? A deliberate contradiction of the normal accentuation pattern. It's done on purpose. So how about we start by looking at rhythm 1343 on page 207. This is one of the ones assigned for next class. 1343. Okay, so we're in 2/4. What beat do we start on? 2. You just want to try to dive into it and read it? Okay. 1343. I'm going to try to go a little bit slower because we've got a lot of subdivisions to deal with here. Let me give you a full measure plus 1 beat. I want a tempo of 1 E and 2 E and 1. 2 E, 1, 2 E, 1, 2 E, 2 and 1. Oh, going from the second full measure into the third full measure is not smooth. What would you say there? Well, you'd have to say 2 E, 2 and 1, right? Let's try that again, the whole thing. Okay. A full measure plus 1 beat. 1 E and 2 E and go. 2 E, 1, 2 E, 1, 2 E, 2 and 1. Good. Are you able to keep this in line? Conducting in line when you're doing this? If not, that's fine. Just work at it, practice it. Practice will get you there where you need to be. And finally, before we leave these rhythms, can we read 1345? 1345 is in 4. And it starts right on the downbeat. Let's start with a full measure of tempo. How about 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and go. 1 E and 4 and E and 2 E 3 and 1 E 2 E 3 and E and 1 E 2 E 3. Whoa! I like this. I don't know. I kind of like this stuff because it's just really absent. You're just bouncing all over the place with this nice syncopation stuff. You want to do that one more time? Okay. Let's do 1345 once more. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and go. 1 E and a, E and a, E and a, 4 and E and a, 2 E, 3 and 1 E, 2 E, 3 and a, E and a, 1 E, 2 E, 3. So between now and next class, you get to practice 1340 through 1345. By the way, I have not had a chance to look through the rhythms this unit and assign one for your rhythm quiz. I'll try to get to that next week, but you'll have plenty of time to do it before the end of the unit. Moving on then, till we go back in the book now to page 122. We are smack dab in the middle still of chapter 8 melodies. And the goal is to try to get to the end of chapter 8, or nearly so, by the end of the semester. So we're going to be, there's so many melodies in chapter 8, we'll just stay in this chapter for the rest of the term. Looking at the bottom of page 122, you can see from your assignment sheet that I assigned melody 814. And when I looked at that, I'm like, what on earth was I thinking? I must just glanced at it and not noticed the clefs. But I figured I assigned it, so I think we're just going to do it anyways. Yeah, it might be the only one in one of these strange clefs. And even if it was an accident, I think we can still do it. Okay. So we're going to go through 814. First of all, what's the name of the clef? Not soprano clef. I know it's been a while. Tenor clef. Tenor clef.
It's backwards.
Yeah, the one that's on the top line, it's a baritone clef. So tenor clef. Sometimes if you take instrumentation with me, sometimes you'll find that cello players read from this clef. Sometimes. When the melody gets pretty hot, or when it gets too high for bass clef. Anyways, so we know where middle C is, right? If you count down, looking at the first note and coupling it with the key signature, what key are we in here? Not G. Close. Yes, E flat minor. 6 flat, I mean G flat major sounds good, but the first note is E flat, right? So we're in E flat minor, and I see one accidental in the whole melody, so I'm going to say E flat harmonic minor. Okay. Now, all we got to do is get started as to what are the opening syllables. It looks like it's do, me, ti, do, sol, sol, do. I think once you get started, you know where your do is found on the staff. It's doable. I've done these before. In fact, I used to get into another chapter in Aural Skills 4, and they'd have a lot of melodies in alto and tenor clef. So I used to actually do that here, not so much in. Okay, so E flat minor. Harmonic minor first. Here we go. Do, re, fa, sol, re, ti, do, ti, re, sol, fa, re, do. Do, re, sol, do, sol, re, do. Okay, it goes slow, it says lento, that's fine. You do not have to observe the repeat, but when we get to the end, we have to take the DC back to the beginning, because otherwise it won't end on do. Do you want to dive in and try? Okay, this is hand sounds. Starting on beat 2. How about a full measure plus one beat? 1, 2, 1. Do, Would you like to read that one? Yes, okay. Let's check our two. This time I'll slow it down a little more. I didn't know I was going quite that fast. Okay, one more time through. I'll try to slow it down. This time let me only give you beat 1. We'll come in on beat 2. 1. Couple other pieces of information about some of the ones I've assigned also for next class. 8:15 on the next page. Can anyone tell me what key that's in? Yep, G sharp minor. And since I see multiple accidentals, I would probably sing the melodic minor scale before performing that one. Now 8:16 is a little bit tricky. You see I only see one accidental. And so I'm thinking G sharp harmonic minor. But this is one where the shortcut that I gave you doesn't really hold true. It doesn't work. And this is really using melodic minor. 8:16. It really uses melodic minor. G sharp is the tonic. So if you want to make a note of that by 8:16 in your book, you're welcome to. And then 8:19, the other one, the final one that I've assigned for next class that's on the next page. 8:19 I have is E minor. And there are no instances of scale degrees 6 or 7 that I can see, so you can sing any minor scale for it. Natural, harmonic, harmonic. That's 8:19. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? Once again, I'll mention that these melodies out of chapter 8 are hard, so please don't try to wing it. When you come to class, you've got to at least look at these melodies and sung through them a few times, at least, just to get them familiar and a little oriented in your head. I do not plan on bringing the bag with the names back until next week. So no names, no quizzing offices today. I will not bring the bag or quiz on next class on Thursday. I'll try to resume all that on next week. So that just gives you an idea of what's coming up in terms of sightseeing, responsibilities, and so forth. Also, now that's not going to affect this class, but did you know that Thursday and Friday there's going to be a videographer? This Thursday and Friday. What do you have last hour? Do you have a class at 10 o'clock?
Yeah, some of us do. It's like 12, 7, 12 o'clock, the teaching something. Yeah.
So, I don't know the schedule, but the videographer is supposed to be in and out of certain classes throughout Thursday and Friday. He's taking obviously some film, some visual footage, but there's no audio. I heard he's not taking any art because we'll put it, I don't know who's gonna do it, but someone's gonna put music to it. So anyways, on Thursday, this Thursday, I'm gonna be wearing Wayne State attire. Yeah, I was told to remind my 10 o'clock class to do that because the videographer is supposed to be in my Aural Skills 2 class, which is last hour, just for a little while. And I was told, have your students wear black and gold, or Wayne State attire, that kind of thing, if you remember. Were you told that? I don't know. You told that last class? Okay, good. So you're gonna remember to wear that on Thursday? Okay, so you've already got your hat ready. Yeah, that's right, there's gonna be some interviews.
But there was only an Abby and you.
Yeah, no, we only sent an email to us three. It's like we didn't know
That's
what else
really
to
fun.
do.
Just
When are you
to see
getting,
us all.
when are you getting,
Next Tuesday?
I thought
oh,
we
we're
were
doing
this
Friday.
Is that the 25th? Thursday is the 25th.
Yeah, then this Thursday at 1.
I'm doing Friday.
Yeah, I have to. We have to miss Thursday.
Yeah, I
Well,
was gonna ask about that.
Just as a suggestion, in the interviews, feel free whenever you want to say something like Dr. Hawkinson is the best teacher in the world.
Wow.
I'll see how my next text I'll see.
So there's conditions. Attached to the
Terms and conditions.
Yeah, okay. Okay, what do we gotta do next? We're gonna do some harmonic dictation. Eventually, you need to turn to page, let me see if I can find it. Page 198. Do you still have page 198? We're going to do number 5 at the top, but before we do that, there's a lot of new material to cover. So I'll eventually get there before the end of class. Hopefully I'll leave enough time for that. If you haven't heard yet, we are adding the sub-median chord. That is to say, we're adding the 6th chord to our palette of harmonies for harmonic dictation and real music. On the board, I have the bass note and Roman numeral chart for major keys and minor keys as it has been set up last unit. I have not added the new chord for this unit yet. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to determine if we're going to be using the 6th chord and listening to it only in root position, never in inversion, right? We do not write 6/6 in theory. Well, unless it's part of a pivot chord game, but that's rare. And we certainly don't ever analyze and write 6/6 for them. Yeah, it makes me want to puke a little. So anyways, if we're just using the 6th chord and listening to it in root position, what syllable is always going to be the bass? La. So in major keys, the 6th chord is minor. And in minor keys, lay will be in the bass, and the 6th chord is major. So there is the new chord, both major and minor keys. Let's think about the syllables and the notes that form or comprise the 6th chord. The minor 6th chord in major keys is going to have the notes la, do, and mi. La, do, mi, that's right. In minor keys, the 6th chord is going to be lay, do, me. I should have been a poet and run away. Rhymes. So what we need to do is, I'd like to vocally arpeggiate these once we're given a do, just for a little bit of practice. And then after that, we'll vocally arpeggiate a well-formed progression that contains the 6 chords in the midst of it somewhere. Let me see, what key should I pick? Yeah, let's pick the key of number 5 at the top. Let's pick F sharp minor. We'll sing a scale first. Let's try harmonic minor. arpeggio one chord first for me? Do, re, sol, re, do. Let's try this one now. La, do, mi. No, that doesn't sound right, does it? I'm saying, I goofed up. Hang on a second. We just did minor. So I should be doing this one. Okay, let's do a one chord first. Do, re, sol, re, do. Re, do, re, do, re. All right, so do you hear how when you're arpeggiating, this is a major triad? Re, do, re, do, re. And lay is always a half step above sol. Lay, sol, sol, lay, sol. That's how you can find lay. You know what? Since we're going to be working in minor, I think I'll wait to vocal arpeggiate this on another day. I don't want to get us mixed up into another mode. Okay. Now, I want you to take a look over here at the chart. Some things that you can hang your hat on. When you hear in minor keys, when you hear lay in the bass, what's one way you can tell the difference between a root position 6 and a 4-chord in first inversion? Just look at the quality of the bone and doing, right? Yeah, if there's a major triad above lay in the bass, it's going to be a capital 6. If you hear a minor chord above lay in the bass, then it's going to be a 4-6. 4-6. So there is a distinction here. I know we have two chords that have lay in the bass, but one is major, one is minor, so hopefully that will help you distinguish the sound of those. Now I know both of these are predominant in function, so maybe that's not going to be that much of a help. But okay. What about in major keys? Isn't there a difference again in chord quality or chord type? La in the bass in major keys, if you hear a major triad, it's 4-6. If you hear a minor triad, it is 6.
Is one more likely than the other?
Because we're focusing on the 6 chord this unit, I think you're going to be finding that 6s appear in your homework and in quizzes and so forth more frequently than the 4-6s. In terms of actual music, just out there without a focus on one or the other, no. I'd say they're used pretty well, pretty close to be equal amounts. I can't really say that I see 4-6 all that much more than 6 or vice versa. That's a good question. But for our purposes, this unit probably going to be some more 6s than 4-6s. One also thing I need to tell you is that in a progression, when 6 functions as a predominant, so for instance, let's say we're in a major key, when it functions as a predominant, it's most likely going to go into a stronger predominant, like a 4 or a 2. I guess it could go to a 5. But it's most likely, 6 is the weakest of the 3 predominant, diatonic predominant. So in a progression, it's probably most likely going to go to a stronger one, predominant, like 4 or 2. Same thing in minor keys. It's very possible that after this 6, you could go to a 4, which could then go to a 2, and then go to a 5, or something like that. But what is the other function that a 6 chord can assume? Tonic function. So there's not a whole lot of them, but I think there are some in your ear training book where the final cadence is deceptive. It's possible that the last chord of a harmonic dictation example now can be a 6 for a deceptive cadence. Because when 6 comes after 5, it possesses tonic function. That was never possible before. I think your ear is pretty good at distinguishing the difference though between I expect the one and I hear something else. Well, what's that something else gotta be? Okay, maybe no more talking on I said we were gonna vocally arpeggiate a progression. Do we still have that F sharp, that tonic in our head? just to be sure. Not putting ourselves on the spot. Okay, now this is kind of a long progression, but it is a well-formed one and it's got a 6 chord in, so let's give it a try. I'm going to start up on the high note. Ready? Tricky with all these predominants. They're really close. They share a lot of tones, but they're slightly different chords. Okay, number 5 at the top of page 198. That's what we're on. It's in the key of F sharp minor. And I have taken the first bass note of the given chord, I've taken it up an octave so I can reach it. So in other words, the first chord that's given to you, instead of down here, I've taken it up an octave so I can play it all together. All right, do your best. There are 2 chords in every measure. Let's hear it the first time. By the way, 6 chords can tend to come pretty early in progression, especially a bass line of "Oh, they fall." Right? If I did it in a major key, how often don't you hear the 6th chord in that context? Right? That's just 1, 6, 5. Yeah, so do down to la or lay, down to fa. That's very common. Very common. Okay, back to F sharp minor. Let's hear the whole thing again. it a third time. Only have time to play it once more. With something like this, I'd probably give you a total of 5 minutes rather than just 4. So even if you can't finish, that's fine. Hopefully you can pick out most of the chords though. Let's hear it once more. Final hearing. Bass in this passage is really no exception to what I was telling you about. No, re, fa, sol, re, sol, do. Okay, now, since we're focusing on the 6th chord and there's only one lay in the whole bass, I hope you have the 6th chord right here. And since we're in minor keys, it should be a capital 6. Now we have fas in the bass. Remember the weakest of the 3 diatonic dominants? What ended up happening was this followed by this. In fact, there's only one note difference between these 2 chords, and that moved in the alto voice. It was a different pitch. Okay, so then we have 5. Well, what was I saying before? There's 2 lays in this example, not just one. I don't know what's wrong with me. I must be on a different planet or problem or something. So what do you think the next chord is? 6, that's right, yes.
With the 1 after the 2, the 2 and the 5, 7.
Yes. In fact, they were both 5/7s.
Yes, sir.
They were both 5/7s. If you-
D and
The soprano, if you got that far, sol, lay, 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 fa, may, fa, may. And so what type of cadence terminates the concluding stanza?
I.
See.
This is kind of weird, but just show the camera.
Sure.
The timer is set up to 1 minute. So I put it up there.
I'll just put in the alto while I'm at it. Remember, the inner voices generally follow the standard part writing convention that we talked about, right? And so just so you remember when a 6 chord comes after a 5 chord, you're supposed to double the 3rd. So you see how there's 1 D, but there's 2 F sharps in there.
Even this book is all
Well, I wish we had time to sing it, but we don't, and there's only 6 of us here. So, that's where we are. It looks like you have some harmonic dictation assigned for next class, and we already went over all the sites in next class. We'll stop here.